Hey everybody, this is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? I'm hanging in. Tough couple of days, obviously. Though I did get a really fun present from a friend. It's we, not me. And discernment, deception. Choose one. Thought that was really cool. And thank you to the person that got that for me, because that's awesome. Keeps me warm. Before I get into my topic today, I got a new mold. Live. Laugh. They're small. I thought they would be a lot bigger. Apparently not. But I also made really cool necklaces. They go on like that. Different shapes. All right. So I did that. And I was watching Super Soldier Talk tonight with James Rink and his guest. And the guest said a lot of things that triggered me off. And I need a regression, big time. I need Reiki healing, big time. And I need to hit the lottery in order to do that because I don't have the funds to even pay my bills right now. I don't know if I'm gonna have the internet on by the new year. So we'll see what happens. I'm trying not to freak out. That's just the nature of life. But in watching that and then recalling my past life, it started to trigger me off to what my artwork is based off of. So I went to art school 15 years ago. I'm scared at that too. I'm not a conventional person. I am not good at math at all. Although my adoptive father was a math teacher for high school. Fun. But I just did not at all really did well in school, normal indoctrination school. Art school gave me the opportunity to be myself and to think outside the box. And my artwork is based off of metaphysical principles. And in that time, I've read a lot of books. A lot. And reading these specific books, and there's a plethora of them I have, saved my life. Big time. As an artist, as a creative person, I have hit rock bottom more times than I can think, and it gets worse each and every time. And this rock bottom, because of my soul swap, I'm not viewing things the way I used to, although I'm being reminded I should, because out of that chaos and darkness comes my most creative activity in my brain. So I thought it would be, as spirit led me to pick certain books out to start with, I'm going to tackle 3 books, but not really read so much as to go over certain like quotes and things that they said that triggered me, that I know there are people out there going through my situation. Of course, in New York and California and other parts of the world, we are seeing full-fledged communism. Whereas people that live in different states, people who live in less restrictive countries, they're living their life obviously in a different way that I am. I had to go to the post office today to send some samples of my DNA drops out and some kreations. 2 hours. Everybody had to wear a mask. There were people standing there making sure it was on. Like signs all over all the businesses down the rows of the mini malls that I went to, like, you need to wear this. There's the new, it's back in law. No, it's a fucking mandate, not a law. It's unconstitutional. So I need to breathe. It's hard here. And I am slowly, like, I'm one person and there's just so much. I'm so overwhelmed in my thoughts of like, I have to move. I'm not getting enough help. Unless things in the world dramatically change in the next like 20 days, I'm gonna be losing everything. So I need to figure this out. And in this mindset that I'm in, Spirit drove me to look back at my philosophy. And it's crazy. I'm being triggered in a lot of different ways to think of outside of the box thinking. So maybe some of you might get triggered if you're watching, but I have 3 books that I'm going to start with. This is going to be like the Numa Alish and the Awaspe. It's like a series of different reads, different ideas and topics that I'll be doing, as long as I have the internet and lights to turn on. So this is Aristotle, Metaphysics. And I'm going to caution some people because of the platform. There's a book that I cannot physically, but I'll show you. And for my hard of hearing and deaf followers, you'll be able to see it. And I'm really sorry to the people who are blind. Not fun. This book in particular saved my life. Now, I know a lot of people view metaphysics and philosophy in a very iffy light because it goes against the grain, but philosophy and these particular people make you think differently. You don't necessarily need to agree with the things that they say. And obviously back in the time that they wrote down all this stuff, the world was still evolving. But it's really interesting to put into perspective a lot of what they had to say. And so a lot of the things I'm going to be reading is in context to the here and the now, and it's what circumstances we're going through. But I have volume 2, by the way. I really love this book. But volume 2 is not easy for me to read because I have not read the books that he mentions and bounces off of. And I want to read those books before I go and read that, because then I can understand it better. And you could tell it's old because it's, yeah. Yeah. Morgan is behaving tonight. She gave up her space right here so I can read. Ethan has yet to make an appearance. I cherish my fur babies. It's the reason why, another reason why I'm still here. Look at that face, old lady. Unconditional love too, very important. So some of these, I'll just be reading some quotes. This is to kind of get you guys thinking and triggered, and not triggered in a bad way. So like when I'm listening to interviews, like I'll give you an example before I get into reading. The guy was talking about helicopters and like cars parked for a long period of time, and like not good things happening to this person in his life. And then it makes me think back to, I have a lot of helicopters. I've had a lot of cars sit for months on end across the street from my house. Some people didn't even know who the car belonged to. You know, I used to wake up at 4 a.m. and leave my house around 4:45, 4:50 to pick up the bus. And, you know, a truck used to pass by all the time at that time, slowly down my block. And it was so bizarre. No idea where this person or who that person was. And it freaked me out majorly because I didn't know what was going on. So that triggers me to think that I could possibly, with all my flashing, the flashes that I get, I might have been a part of the SSP. I could have been a part of some sort of messed up program that I'm unaware of because I haven't had the luxury of getting my memories back, if I'm allowed that, if that was in my timeline. But I sure do know that when I'm exhausted and I go to sleep and I wake up exhausted and my whole day I'm exhausted and I've been exhausted and I'm not necessarily in my body, my astral body's working. And I get flashes of what, where I am, and it's creepy. And I don't know if it's in this timeline or it's in another timeline. I don't know if it's the future, the past, no idea. But certain things that people do trigger others to start remembering. And for me, philosophy helped trigger a lot, especially when I was in college. And we're going to start with Aristotle. This is from book Beta. Yes, it goes through the Greek alphabet, by the way. And these quotes are not, I picked that they're not in like any particular order either. They're just ones that I like. Obviously I take a lot of notes and mark things down. And nothing can come to be which could not have come to be, so that whatever has come to be exists necessarily once it has come to be. Wrap your head around that. I'm going to read it again. And nothing can come to be which could not have come to be, so that whatever has come to be exists necessarily once it has come to be. For it is only the region of what is sensible around about ourselves that is continually in process of destruction and generation. But this is, so to speak, not even a small part of the whole, so that it would have been more just to acquit this small bit because of the whole than to condemn the whole because of the small bit. For all such questions arise because man demanded a reason for everything. There's more. They seek to prove that they can reach ultimate principles, but their very actions prove that they are not conceived. An indivisible quantity is called a unit if it is indivisible in every dimension and is without position. It is called a point. If it is indivisible in every dimension and has position, a line, if divisible in a single dimension, a plane, if divisible in 2 dimensions, and a body, if quantitatively divisible in all 3 dimensions. In reverse order, then what is divisible in 2 dimensions is a plane, divisible in a single dimension, a line, divisible in quantity in no dimension, either a point or a unit, the unit being without a position and the point having position. And that's from book Delta. This is from book Kappa. But it is foolish to occupy oneself equally with all the doctrines and fancies of those who dispute with one another. For it is clear that some of them must be in error. And this is evident from the facts of sense, for the same thing never appears sweet to some and the contrary to others, unless in some the organ by means of which the flavors mentioned are sensed and discriminated has been corrupted and injured. This being so, some must be taken as the measure, the others must not. And so I say the same thing about good and bad, beautiful and ugly, and other qualities of the sort. For to maintain the view in question is no different from insisting that what appears to those who push a finger under their eye and make one object appear to be 2 must therefore be two, because it appears to be two, and yet it is also one, because the same object appears to be one to those who do not so manipulate their eye. In general, it is absurd to present the fact that familiar objects appear to change and never to return in the same state as a criterion of truth. For in the pursuit of truth, one must start from wherever is always in the same state and does not undergo change. Since beings are the celestial bodies, for they do not appear to be now of one sort and then another, but always the same and share in no change. Besides, if there is movement, there is always something that is moved, and everything is moved out of something and into something. And what is moved must accordingly be in that out of which is moved, and then not be in it, but moved into the other and come to be in it. And contradictories cannot, as these men say, be true together. And supposing familiar objects are quantitatively in continuous flux and motion, even through this is not true, why could they not endure quantitatively? For contradictory predictions about the same thing appear to have risen largely from taking quantities of bodies as not enduring, because the same thing is taken both to be not to be 4 cubits long, but essentially being is qualitative, and such being is determinate by nature, whereas quantitative being is indeterminate. Why is it that when the physician prescribes some particular food, men take it? And why is this bread rather than not bread? If it is either, it would make no difference whether men ate or not. But as it is, men take the food prescribed, assuming that they know the truth about it, and they eat what they believe to be bread. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Yet they should not if there were no definite constant nature is perceived objects, but all natures were always moved and in flux. And if we always change and never remain the same, what wonder is it if to us, as to the sick, things never appeared the same? For because the sick are not in the same condition as when they are in good health, things do not appear alike to them in sense perception. Yet the perceived objects need for this reason share in this change. They produce different, not the same sensations in the sick. So also in other cases in which change occurs, however, if we do not change but remain the same, there will be something that abides. It is evident that from what has been said, that there is a primary being, external and unmovable and separate from sensible things. It has always been shown that this primary being cannot have magnitude, but is without parts and indivisible. For the unmoved mover moves in unlimited time, and nothing limited has unlimited power. Since every magnitude is either unlimited or limited, the prime mover cannot have a limited magnitude for the reason given, and he cannot have an unlimited magnitude because there is no such thing as an unlimited magnitude. It has always been shown that the first mover cannot be moved and is unalterable, for all other movements are posterior to locomotion, it is clear then that these things are as they are. Things that make you go, things that make you go, And that's the book of Lambda. Someone's thinking about me again because my nose is really itchy. This is the book of New. This is a short one. For never will this be proved that things that are not are. That quote. Oh, this is for another read for another time, but for nature's show is not episodic life like a poor tragedy. Aristotle does a lot of Pythagorean talks in this book, and that's for another topic, because the book is under there. I don't feel like mushing books. Coincides with the Hyperianism. So metaphysics is really difficult to understand because it's the state of like putting like meaning to life and understanding like in a philosophical way, but also showing with different devices what goes on. It's perception. It's logic and perception. And my work, my artwork, my painting specifically, not necessarily a lot of my other stuff, but my paintings in specific go into the things that we cannot perceive yet still exist. So a lot of my paintings have an explosion of color in light waves. We can't perceive that, but then how do we perceive color, and how do you watch if you're not blind? How do you perceive things? You use your eyes, use your senses. So I'm just depicting the things that exist. We know that they are existing, but we can't perceive them. Like you cannot perceive microwaves, radio waves. I know there are people out there who are having the talent to do such things, but that is very rare. But there are people who can perceive things that others can't. I have a very unique distortion in my DNA. I see a lot more colors than most people. I forgot the exact term. It's really cool. Now into my favorite book. And I don't expect everybody to understand this. This is like, this stuff is deep, but it makes you think. So this is Schopenhauer, The World as Will and Representation. On the other hand, the law of causality and the consideration and investigation of nature, which follow on it, lead us necessarily to necessarily to the certain assumption that each more highly organized state of matter succeeded in time a cruder state. Thus, animals existed before men, fishes before land animals, plants before fishes, and the inorganic before that which is organic. Consequently, the original mass had to go through a long series of changes before the first eye could be opened. And yet the existence of this whole world remains forever dependent on that first eye that opened, were it even that of an insect. For such an eye necessarily brings about knowledge, for which and in which alone the whole world is, and without which it is not even conceivable. Doesn't that make you go, hmm? I love this. Let us transport ourselves to a very lonely region of boundless horizons, under a perfectly cloudless sky, trees and plants in the perfect motionless air, no animals, no human beings, no moving masses of water, the profoundest silence. But the impression becomes even stronger when we have before our eyes the struggle of the agitated forces of nature on a large scale. When in these surroundings, the roaring of a falling stream deprives us of the possibility of hearing our own voices, or when we are abroad in the storm of tempestuous seas, mountainous waves rise and fall, are dashed violently against steep cliffs, and shoot their spray high into the air. The storm howls, the sea roars, the lightning flashes from black clouds, and thunderclaps drown the noise of the storm and sea. Then in the unmovable beholder of this scene, the twofold nature of his consciousness reaches the highest distinctiveness. Simultaneously, he feels himself as an individual, as the feeble phenomenon of will, which the slightest touch of these forces can annihilate, helpless against powerful nature, dependent, abandoned to chance, a vanishing nothing in face of stupendous forces. And he also feels himself as the eternal, serene subject of knowing, who, as the condition of every object, is the supporter of this whole world, the fearful struggle of nature being only his material picture or representation. He himself is free from and foreign to all willing and all needs in the quiet comprehension of the ideas. This is the full impression of the sublime. Here it is caused by the sight of a power beyond all comparison, superior to the individual and threatening him with annihilation. But against such a ghost of our own nothingness, against such a lying impossibility, there arises the immediate consciousness that all these worlds exist only in our representation, only as modifications of the external subject of pure knowing. Holograph matrix, anybody? The unspeakable pain, the wretchedness and misery of mankind, the triumph of wickedness, the scornful mastery of chance, and the let's rewind. The unspeakable pain, the wretchedness and misery of mankind, the triumph of wickedness, the scornful mastery of chance, and the irretrievable fall of the just and the innocent are all here present to us. And here is to be found a significant hint as to the nature of the world and of existence. We lose ourselves in a bottomless void. We find ourselves like a hollow glass globe, from the emptiness of which a voice speaks. But the cause of this voice is not to be found in the globe. And since we want to comprehend ourselves, we grasp with a shudder nothing but a wavering and unstable phantom. We can compare time to an endlessly revolving sphere. The half that is always sinking would be the past, and the half that is always rising would be the future. But at the top, the invisible point that touches the tangent would be the extensionless present. I don't know about you guys, but Holy Ascension symptoms. He who has reached the point still always feels, as living body, as concrete phenomenon of will, the nature tendency to every kind of willing, be the deliberately suppresses it, since he compels himself to refrain from doing all that he would like to do, and on the other hand, to do all that he would not like to do, even if this has no further purpose than that of serving to mortify the will. As he himself denies the will that appears in his own person, he will not resist when another does the same thing. In other words, inflicts wrong on himself. Therefore, every suffering that comes to him from outside through chance or the wickedness of others is welcome to him. Every injury, every ignominy, every outrage. He gladly accepts them as the opportunity for giving himself the certainty that he no longer affirms the will, but gladly sides with every enemy of the will's phenomenon, that is his own person. He therefore endures such ignominy and suffering with inexhaustible patience and gentleness, returns good for all evil without ostentation, and allows the fire of anger to rise again within him as little as he does the fire of desires. Just as he mortifies the will itself, so does he mortify its visibility, its objectivity, the body. He nourishes it sparingly, lest its vigorous flourishing and thriving should animate a flesh and excite more strongly the will, of which it is the mere expression of mirror. Thus he resorts to fasting and even to self-castigation and self-torture, in order that by constant privation and suffering, he may more and more break down and kill the will that he recognizes and abhors as the source of his own suffering existence and of the world's. Finally, if death comes, which breaks up the phenomenon of this will, the essence of such will having long since expired through free denial of itself, except for the feeble residue which appears as the vitality of this body, then it is most welcome and is cheerfully accepted as a longed for deliverance. It is not merely the phenomenon, as in the case of others, that comes to an end with death, but the inner being itself that is abolished. This had a feeble existence merely in the phenomenon. This last slender bond is now severed. For him who ends thus, the world has at the same time ended. Just a pondering, guys. The more intense the will, the more glaring the phenomenon of its conflict, and hence the greater the suffering. A world that was the phenomenon of an incompletely more intense will to live than the present one will exhibit so much the greater suffering. Thus, it would be a hell. Sorry, guys, I had to pause because the cat, this one right there, this one, she likes to grab my attention by pawing with her claws on objects. It's like nails on a chalkboard, 10 times worse. And when I'm reading, it is very annoying and hard to concentrate when she's doing that. Usually she sleeps when I'm doing videos. Can you behave now, Mama? I know a lot of people like to watch my videos with Morgan. She's old, she's grumpy. Right? She also likes to take selfies with my phone. Okay, back to my favorite guy. Behind our existence lies something else that becomes accessible to us only by shaking off the world. I have to do that. I have to remind myself of that. I really do. It is the nature of being different, of which we have demonstrated that it exists and is dispersed piecemeal over all being in mutual relationship. And since we oppose to being every single particle of this nature, we have ventured to assert that precisely this is in truth non-being. I recommend really good read. Not easy at all. Like I said, the second volume, I can barely get through. He has a lot of books. This is another one. I'll read a few from here. Death, the repetition of the comparison must be excused, is like the setting of the sun, which is only apparently engulfed by the night, but actually itself the source of light, burns without intermission, brings new days to the worlds, and is always rising and always setting. He's very poetic. The intellectual gain of the man who thinks for himself is, therefore, like a beautiful painting, that vividly stands out without correct light and shade, sustained tone, and perfect harmony of colors. The intellectual acquisition of the mere scholar, on the other hand, is like a large palette full of bright colors, systematically arranged, perhaps, but without harmony, subsequence, and significance. This one, he goes into this book in particular, he goes into the metaphysics of music, which is pretty cool. Of art. I like this book a lot also. This is a good one. On the other hand, if it were the intention to make prevailing prejudices the standard of truth, or the boundary mark beyond which the expounding of truth may not go, then it would be more honest to abolish philosophical faculties and academies entirely. For what does not exist should not also not appear. Accordingly, both objectively and subjectively, everyone is the nearer to one source of suffering in human life, the more remote he is from the other. For the fool in purple groans under the burden of his wretched individuality that cannot be thrown off, whereas the man of great gifts populates and animates with his ideas the most dreary and desolate environment. This is a good one. I was going to read from this, but I might hold off, and because I want to get into this. The reason why I'm going to hold off is the metaphysics of morals, which the world lacks right now, big time. Before I get into this, there is a lot that we are all collectively putting together. As Mike says, it's we, not me. Each of us holds a piece of a puzzle of understanding the greater whole of existence. And that understanding collectively helps us form a social memory complex, in my opinion. When we all come together and affirm each other with ideas, with knowledge, we better ourselves. But a lot of people don't put in the work. And they're only looking at one source, and they're not going to the many. No one person has it correct, but not all people have it wrong. You have to dig in every direction you could possibly dig into in order for the truth to start unfolding. And what's happening in our world today is that we have an opposition that refuses to cover what is true. Although they know the truth, it's a deception on the whole. Being an awake, not awoken, being somebody that could see through the matrix, who grasps a lot of these very hard topics, but living in an area where I see outside of the coin where other people only see within. It is so frustrating how closed off and closed-minded people are to the truth. Big time. There's no arguing with people like that. They're not willing to at least hear the other side of the coin and then make discernment and goes in and take in what resonates with them. There are many more people waking up. They're starting to see the illusion that was presented to them through the black box CIA, control, brainwashing. It's also very hard for a lot of people to connect with those who have abilities, who have claims that they were taken and abducted, who see the world differently. But that doesn't make them wrong. There's a lot. I mean, if you watch the Men in Black, the movie with Will Smith, and they have the device to wipe your mind of the memory, I bet that's the karma of the Satanist telling you that already happened. There's a lot that is now merging back into our timeline. The Mandela effect. There's a lot now coming back that people are showing that the proof exists. The one being the Shazam movie with Sinbad. Some sites tell you it doesn't exist. And then when you see the evidence, there's 1984 all over again. So my Friedrich here, his work as a whole has helped me see an existential viewpoint of reality. Because when I read a lot of this work, I wasn't in any paradigm that made me happy. I was in a very chaotic state in my early 20s, I was also very sick. I'm gonna pause again. I get text messages with people who wish me a Merry Christmas. Sorry, I don't celebrate holidays. Majority of religious holidays have been inverted. Christmas is technically a pagan holiday, and although paganism is not bad nor good, think about where the Christmas tree came from. Think about the mistletoe and the Norse story of what happened with mistletoe and Balder and Loki. Think about that. Think about all the other holidays. Why? So then I have to explain to people about how everything's been inverted. So this is an interesting read. How the real world at last became a myth. History of an error. Error. The real world obtainable to the wise, the pious, the virtuous man. He dwells in it. He is it. Oldest form of the idea, relatively sensible, simple, conceiving. Transcription of the proposition I, Plato, am the truth. The real world unobtainable for the moment, but promised to the wise, the pious, the virtuous man, to the sinner who repents. Progress of the idea, it grows more refined, more enticing, more incomprehensible. It becomes a woman, it becomes Christian. The real world, unobtainable, undemonstrable, cannot be promised, but even when merely thought of, a consolation, a duty, an imperative. Fundamentally, the same old sun, but shining through mist and skepticism, the idea grown sublime, pale, northingly. The real world unattainable, unobtained at any rate, and if unattained, also unknown. Consequently, also no consolation, no redemption, no duty. How could we have a duty towards something unknown? The gray of dawn, first yawnings of reason, cockcrow of positivism. The real world, an idea no longer of any use, not even a duty any longer, an idea grown useless, superfluous, consequently a refuted idea. Let us abolish it. Broad daylight breakfast, return of cheerfulness, and Plato blushes for shame. All free spirits run riot. We have abolished the real world. What world is left? The apparent world, perhaps, but no. With the real world, we have also abolished the apparent world. Midday moment of the shortest shadow, end of the longest error, zenith of mankind, incipit Zarathustra. Someone's definitely messaging me and thinking of me because my nose is still very itchy. The era of a false causality. We have always believed we know what a cause is, but whence did we derive our knowledge? More precisely, our belief we possess this knowledge. Ooh. The inner world is full of phantoms and false lights. The will is one of them. The will no longer moves anything, consequently, no longer explains anything. It merely accompanies events. It can also be absent. That's some very deep food for thought. The most spiritual human beings, assuming they are the most courageous, also by experience, by far the most painful tragedies. But it's precisely for this reason that they honor life, because it brings against them its most fathomable weapons. Man really mirrors himself in things, that which give him back his own reflection, he considers beautiful. The judgment beautiful is his conceit of his species. To die proudly when it is no longer possible to live proudly. The hammer speaks. Why so hard? The charcoal once said to the diamond, for are we not close relations? Why so soft, oh my brothers? Thus I ask you, for are you not my brothers? Why so soft, unresisting and yielding? Why is there so much denial and abnegation in your hearts? So little fate in your glances. And if you will not be fates, if you will not be exorable, how can you conquer with me? And if your hardness will not flash and cut to pieces, how can you one day create with me? For all creators are hard, and it must seem bliss to you to press your hand upon millennia as upon wax. Bliss to write upon the will of millennia as upon metal, harder than metal, nobler than metal. Only the noblest is perfectly hard. This new law table do I put over you. Oh, my brother, become hard. For the most spiritual human beings, as the strongest, find their happiness where others would find their destruction, in the labyrinth, in severity towards themselves and others. In attempting their joy lies in self-constraint. With them, aestheticism becomes nature, need instinct. They consider the hard task a privilege, to play with vices which overwhelm others a recreation, knowledge a form of aestheticism. I hope those little passages in each makes you think outside of the box. I hope understanding that we will emerge victorious, but many of us are going through beyond the dark night of the soul. There's hell. And here we are. How can you formulate your form of heaven? How can you manifest it into existence? We have to raise our vibration. But how can we do that when everything is collapsing around us? The narrative is changing. The people in the box are telling you very scary things. Shut it off. And use your discernment. A lot of people are falling into these traps. It's time to go within and listen to your gut. I have a whole book I wrote with all the quotes and little passages that resonated with me. And tonight, Spirit just led me to some of these books, and I had the tingly sensation when things popped up and that needed to be read. So let me know down in the comments if they resonated with you at all. I will tackle philosophy a little bit more and go in more detail. But the purpose of this particular video is to just read it without my commentary too much on it, just to get you guys triggered, to resonate within your soul. Not everybody will resonate with it. Not everybody will understand it, but the few who do, did you get something out of it? Did it spark something within inside you? We all get sparks of inspiration. We all get sparks of knowing. We get our recall. We get a lot of things when we just simply listen and read. And sometimes when there's too much explanation or another person's perception, it bleeds out the meaning for yourself to interpret. So I figured I'd just read some key things that popped out at me, and I hope that somebody takes at least one thing away from any one of those that I read. I hope all of you have a wonderful night. Very soon, I'm going to be doing another giveaway. No one claimed my wolf. I will try to put something else up because, hey, I like giving back. I also have working on with somebody, trying to get them hooked up to Zoom to doing an interview. That's going to be super effing amazing if I can get this to come off. A really good friend of mine, his story is absolutely incredible, and I hope it happens, but it'll happen in divine timing. So stay tuned for that. And now I have the ability to go live on Facebook and on YouTube, doing both. So I'm very excited for that. Although I don't have everybody else's like podcast fun and colors, and I still don't have that, but I don't care. As long as this message gets out to the world, people start resonating with it, people understand where we're at. We're at the crossroads to the dying of the old and rebirthing something into an existence. And it doesn't take much for it to go in the wrong direction. We all need to start manifesting what our piece of heaven wants to look like. What are you going to create? I would like to have everybody not have to worry about working for money, but working for what they love to do and what they're passionate about. I would love all the artists, no matter what field you're in, to start being acknowledged and the term starving artist never be in existence again. It's time that the creative people, the healers of the world, be recognized for their talents. There's so much talent, and yet very few, the chosen few, are chosen for a different reason that has nothing to do with talent. It has other negative connotations plugged onto those things. It is very rare that talented people get seen. And in the age of technology and in the age of everything's everywhere, it's overconsumption as well. So even if somebody does put something out, only a small percentage of people find it. We have to change that. We need a better world. Let's create it together, guys. We can do it. Let's start manifesting, putting it out there into the ether, a better world for all of us, not just a few, all of us. Let's all get abundant. Let's not have to ever worry about fictitious money that doesn't really exist, that just printed like Monopoly money. We should all have an opportunity to thrive in our lifetime. There should be no world hunger. There should be no talk about population or other things. Let's do better, world. I want to thank everybody for watching, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. I love my comments. I love my emails. Keeps me going. I'm in a crazy state of mental craziness right now. So it cheers me up. If you have it within you to help me out and to donate so I could put food on my table, keep the lights on. It's real in New York. Just read the news. Don't watch it, you read it. PayPal.me/alleycatkreations211. Venmo @alleycatkreations211. Email me at alleycatkreations211@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook at Alley Cat Creations. You can find me on Instagram with some crazy content that I post at Alley Cat's Creations. I'm on different platforms. You can go find me there at Alley Cat normally. I'm sending all of you love and light. We're getting close to things happening. Spread the love. Spread the light. It's going to be okay. And if not, I don't know how much longer most of us will be here. But let's keep it positive. Have a good night, everyone.